On today's University of Arizona Futures in Digital Learning podcast, we have a conversation about universal design.
Transferring the skills you learn into your next class or into your job or into the real world is an important part of universal design.
Join Adam Davi, Brian Hale, and Jessica Zeitler as they discuss how universal design can be applied to online learning and course design, share stories about their design experiences, and provide practical tips for applying universal design to your course.
Welcome, everybody, to the Digital Download podcast. This is our first official one, I guess, for 2022. I am Adam Davi, a senior instructional designer at the Office of Digital Learning, and I'm here with my co-host.
I'm Brian Hale, an instructional designer in digital learning.
And we are overjoyed to be joined today by Jessica Zeitler, an instructional designer in our office, today to talk about universal design. So welcome, Jessica.
Thank you, Adam. I'm super excited to be here and looking forward to our conversation.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, we're just going to kick it off, nice and big here for our audience and let you, as the expert in universal design, just kind of tell us, what is it? What is universal design?
I'm sure there's lots of definitions for universal design for learning. Some people call it a framework. Some people call it an approach. Often people say, oh, it's an approach to designing, an approach to teaching students, and what it does is it offers our varied learners ways to connect with the material. For example, a diversity of options. It offers choice in learning, where one assignment might say, oh, you can only write this, and if we really want to apply universal design for learning, we would say, well, we're not really assessing the writing, we're just looking for the response. So giving the students choice to choose whether they're going to do a video recording or a written response, for example, or just a voice recording.
So that makes me think of a question right off the top. How is UDL different or the same as the phrase scaffolding?
Ooh, I feel like it would be very similar, just because, well, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, because I haven't thought too much about scaffolding. But when I think about scaffolding, I think about kind of chunking out learning. And so we're going from kind of small pieces and kind of building on those pieces, right? And so we're scaffolding a content topic, so it can go from, and we can think of Bloom's in this way too. Bloom's taxonomy is we're going from like identify and then moving to maybe harder, like discuss or explain or apply. So that's what I think when I think of scaffolding, right? When I think of UDL, I think it's actually broken down into three pieces, right? So we're looking at engagement. How are we engaging the students, recruiting that interest? Representation, how are we allowing students to, how are we representing the material? Are we just representing it in one way, which might be a barrier for some students? For example, video, which has been a great adoption, especially during the pandemic, it has really grown, but are we only offering the video, or are we adding the captions to it? So that, like, if I'm a mom and I'm a nursing student and I'm a mom and I'm doing all these things and I really want to do my homework, but the only time I have is while I'm driving my car on the way to work. Well, can I listen to that? Or am I in a busy situation, coffee shop, where I only want to read it? So offering that varied representation. And then the third is action and expression, where faculty as well as instructional designers, and we'll have to talk about the relationship between instructional designers and faculty for sure in this endeavor, right? But thinking about action and expression, and where faculty as well as instructional designers really work to kind of guide, instead of being that sage on the stage, being the guide on the side, as they say, and working to, I would really say, foster this choice for student voice and choice, right? So for students to be able to choose how they express themselves. For example, I'm a dyslexic, and I didn't know that for a very long time. I have so many coping mechanisms. It's not even funny, but now learning is so fun for me because now I'm like, oh, they're going to let me do video where I get to talk, whereas writing was so challenging for me it took many years for me to really feel comfortable with it. But so that action and expression really allows the student to feel kind of make it their own place. And I hope we talk about space and place too at some point.
So it's actually, universal design is actually something you can implement at every stage of the course. You don't it's not an umbrella. You don't just think, oh, I have this course, I'm going to make it universally designed and I'm going to let students do some videos here and there. You actually think about it in each, let's say, module or each week of the course. You implement this universal design to allow students that freedom to express themselves. So it's not
Yeah.
just a one and done. You have to constantly be thinking about it as you're designing your course. Yeah, there's all these words like scaffolding and framework, and now we're going to toss universal design in there. And sometimes all these terms we throw at instructors and instructional designers, you get bogged down in that. Wait, what is this thing that I have to put in my course? And so it's nice to understand that UDL is sort of, let's say we're building an ice cream sundae.
Ooh.
What part of the ice cream sundae is UDL?
Mm.
It can be whatever part you want it to be, right? Because it's about our expression, and like you said, there are three areas of it: the engagement, representation, and expression. So it can be however we want to help our learners express their learning, and I think it's great.
I think I'm gonna go off of your little ice cream sundae metaphor here, Brian, and
Perfect.
because it just got me thinking. I'm like, as far as universal design is concerned with an ice cream sundae, as before, you might say like everybody has to build an ice cream sundae and it has to have ice cream and hot fudge and nuts and whipped cream. And
But wait,
then
I don't like nuts.
or I'm allergic to nuts, right? Like, and then so it's like, well, why do I have to build that? Like, that's not effective for me. Like, that's not going to be good for me. So now universal design, you can say, all right, you have to build an ice cream sundae and it has to have ice cream because it's an ice cream sundae, but here are different options for ice cream, right? Okay, let's say you're lactose intolerant. Maybe we have a dairy-free option that you can put in, right? Or, let's say you want a sorbet or you want gelato instead. Okay, and then you have this other menu of options that you can choose. You can choose to put nuts, you can choose to put whipped cream, you can choose to put cherries, you can choose to put caramel, as long as you have, the main structure of what it is, and then that's what you submit, and that's your kind of universal design. Am I sort of on the right track there with what you're talking about as far as student choice? And so you're not excluding students if they have a different ability like dyslexia, or they have something along those lines that's going to make things difficult. You're kind of removing barriers is what I hear you saying, and giving them choice to have some ownership over their own learning and their own ice cream.
That is exactly what I'm saying. Yes. And one of the things that I love that you pointed out is that inclusive nature of it, because in removing barriers, those things they overlap, right? So as a faculty member myself, gosh, like one of the most important things I think about is I want my students to be able to engage in the class. And if there's barriers that impacts their learning or their engagement, I definitely want to be able to remove or at least lower the barriers if possible, when that is an option. And so now, as both a faculty and an instructional designer, I think, okay, like thinking about those course maps, like when we're designing the content for the course, this is a great time to think, okay, so this is what the learning objective, or, this is what the outcome looks like. What am I really looking for in this assignment? And is there an option to offer more choice without overwhelming the faculty, for example, because, you also want to consider that. I know faculty are so pressed for time
Mhm.
and so working so hard. And so I definitely would like to say, you don't have to sometimes thinking about choice too. You think about, and I give an example, and I'm not critiquing the Cheesecake Factory at all, but you look at the menu. I look at the Cheesecake Factory menu and it's so overwhelming because there's so much choice. I'm like, I just don't even know what I want to eat now. But just having some choice, but not, you don't have to have the full spectrum, but if you can offer some choice to allow students to be able to express themselves, that's really great. And then not too much so that the faculty doesn't feel overwhelmed with the grading process.
Something that comes into my mind is, what is the difference between inclusive and accessible? How do we approach that when we're talking about UDL?
Those are all really, that's a really good question.
Can they be the same thing?
Well, I think, I worked on a project with Meg Hunter at another university in the ID to ID group. It's with Eli and EDUCAUSE. And we worked on UDL, and we created this little bridge map. And we don't have a camera here, so you're going to have to imagine kind of a Venn diagram, right? And we really imagined UDL is kind of a connector for these overlapping other topics like accessibility and equity and inclusion. So while they may not overlap 100%, there is overlap. I would say UDL is like kind of the big circle. And then the smaller circles, you have equity and inclusion as well as accessibility, which both overlap each other as well on top of that UDL. And so if you can imagine kind of those three circles in a Venn diagram and kind of multiple layers there. But the point being is with UDL, and I have a great story that happened this week as an awesome example, and I was just so happy. But with UDL, you have the opportunity to, when you're offering choice, you're addressing accessibility and inclusion elements as well. Well, I won't say that, UDL connects with all of accessibility concerns because of the variability of learners, right? But it addresses a lot, and that's really helpful. Can I tell you my story?
Please do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I'm working with this wonderful faculty member in medicine, and I kind of made it a non-negotiable when we started talking. He's like, I'm going to do a lot of videos. I'm like, okay, as long as we can get them in on time, because we really want to get these captioned. And he was like, yeah, okay. So sometimes we've been a little pressed for time, but he had 52 videos. Okay, that's a lot of videos, but they were short, and and a lot of knowledge. And we pulled them in play posits, and we did all these fun things. And then the course is about to start in a couple of weeks, and we both get a notice, me as the instructional designer and him as the faculty member from ADR, right? Saying, we have a student who has a hearing disability, and we need to make sure that all of your content is accessible. And boy, was that a huge sigh of relief for me. All of our first party, or all of the items that we made, were already ready. Can you imagine trying to caption 52 videos last minute?
Yeah.
That would be some work. And so because we took that UDL approach and said, we're going to make sure that these videos are captioned. And, we also did there's other elements within the course that are accessible as well, but in reference to that specific disability, we had already addressed it up front. So we only had to look at a few third-party items that were like YouTube videos that were auto-captioned with YouTube. And we passed those off, and ADR was going to check them out. But it just kind of re-emphasized for the faculty member as well as for me, gosh, I'm glad we're doing this. Like, we did this. And so the stress level was very limited in terms of like making sure that those extra things are done prepared for the student. and taking down those barriers. They were already taken down before we arrived, right?
Yeah.
And what a sigh of relief that is to know you've already done the work ahead of time, that you don't have to scramble at the last minute, or in addition to, your department doesn't have the extra expense of a last minute rush to caption videos.
Yeah. We talk about universal design, and it's very proactive in its kind of approach to, meet students where they are and provide those options. And I like your Venn diagram, kind of approach to how UDL and accessibility and inclusion all kind of work together, because they're not all the same, even though they touch on those different aspects. But if you can be proactive, I think that's great. So my question then is, like, how do you approach working with faculty and kind of talking about universal design? Like, what does that look like in a design meeting with you?
Mm. Of course, first I want to connect with faculty and see where their course is, and some of the things, because I am not an subject matter expert often within the topic. And so I often want to know what is exciting that faculty member. What made them fall in love with their subject? And I know that sounds maybe really silly, but when I was teaching in person, I didn't realize it then, but now I realize it. The fact that I was so passionate and excited about my topic, which is Spanish language, culture, literature, history, and all of the above, that my students just had a great time. They, for the most part, I can't say everyone had a great time, but it's thinking about some of those things that connect that faculty member with the topic, and then thinking about how can we share that passion in an online format and make sure that there's no barriers there. And so I like to talk about, content, but also, what have been some of the challenges that they've had in the past, with student capturing the knowledge and sharing the knowledge. And I always like to approach it as, how are we connecting? What is the purpose, and how is this connecting with the student life, or the student's life? And how can we kind of lower some of those barriers so that students can express themselves? So I guess it's over many conversations, looking at content and then the students, and combine the faculty's passion, and then also just saying, we don't want to have to come back and make this course more accessible. If we do it up front, if we do these things up front, it's going to save us a lot of time, and it's going to be a better course. And faculty, I think the one big thing that they love to hear is, listen, I'm your partner in this, and I'm gonna do this for you, so you don't have to worry. It's about time. They're concerned, they have limited time, they're only paid for so much time, and it's our job as instructional designers to be there as their partners. And so they often, they'll really get on board when you say, hey, I'm your partner in this, and I'm gonna, make sure that we can, make sure these captions are here, or I'm here to explore tech tools to see how we can offer a varied approach to representation of your material, for example. They appreciate that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That and I think, for our audience listening, both on the instructional design and the faculty side, that's nice to hear too, right? We're all in this together. We're partners. For our younger audience members there, you'll probably recognize that High School Musical reference. That was not intentional, but I did it anyway. So that's great. Well, I also want to give you a chance to talk about this idea of space and place, which you brought up earlier. And I know you're excited about it based on some pre-conversations we've had before the recording, and the fact that you brought it up so enthusiastically earlier. So I want to hear more about this idea of space and place, because I went through a phase in my own kind of career development where I was real big into designing learning spaces and what that looked like, and so I'm always curious to hear what others have to say about that as well.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to share, but you're gonna have to stop me if I go too far on my tangent here.
No, we're going. We have unlimited
Okay.
recording space here. We're good.
Okay, well, I'll try to not get too theoretical, because what's really important is kind of processing the theory and thinking, okay, how is this applicable and practical for faculty, for instructional designers? So I did my dissertation on the development of intellectual practices and development of intellectual space, which often ended up being a physical space. But it's scary to say this, I'm a medievalist. I don't carry a sword or a shield, but I do study in a lot of old libraries and manuscripts. And I tracked intellectuals moving all over the medieval Mediterranean and how they shared knowledge. So it's really interesting that I feel like we're kind of folding on time here, because a lot of the ways that people shared knowledge in medieval times really connects in terms of space and place of how we share it today. And what I mean by that is space is often a very geographical reference. In English, we interchange space and place quite a bit, the words, but place, as it's been defined by geographical spatial researchers, is what our perception. So place doesn't happen until it has meaning for us and our perception of it. And so when I imagine space and place in terms of online learning, what I'm thinking about is, for example, Adam and Brian, we're partnering with faculty members and we're creating a space. So I guess the question is, does it have meaning before the students are in it, or are we allowing the students to make it a place that has meaning for them, meaning and value, right? Yeah. And so when I think about space and place, I think both are very valuable. But when I think of us as instructional designers and faculty members, and also kind of taking that Michelle Pacansky-Brock approach of humanizing the course, if we're allow students, and I'll get back to how it's related to UDL in a second, but if we serve as facilitators, as enablers for students to shape that place by creating community, by choosing the type of assignment they do. And I'm not saying the whole assignment, the topic and the outcomes would still be the same, but choosing whether I'm going to do a video or a written assignment, going with my strengths maybe, or letting our students, we empower them maybe through community guidelines by creating that community. We're allowing them to, we're not only humanizing the course, we're giving students voice and choice, but we're allowing them to shape a place that has meaning and value to them. So that is going back to UDL, it applies a lot of those. One, representation. We're offering a representation, but we're allowing that action and expression of the students, that choice of how they want to express and take action in terms of learning. And we might even say that we're allowing them, like if we're empowering them to represent their community and through community guidelines, they are actually choosing that representation in some ways. I think I'm still processing it really, but that's my thought about space and place. And I think our ability to empower students and support students in making that community and making our online classes not just this vacuum of content, but there's people in that space, right? And so we want those people to be able to create community and for it to have meaning.
So a question that I think of from an instructor point about universal design is, how do I provide my students, if I'm giving them options of turning in their work in different ways? Some person's going to do a video, another person might write me an essay, another person might choose to start a discussion board and bring in other class members, how do I make sure as an instructor that I am providing equitable feedback on all those different types of
Mhm.
assignments that I'm allowing students to turn in?
That's a really great question. And also I've also heard from faculty, how am I going to grade all those things?
Yeah.
That's a lot. And Adam, I don't know if you wanted to jump in. I have a thought on it, but I don't want to take up
I,
all the airspace.
I mean, so I will just say, and you know, this was a story from years ago, back in my K-12 teaching days, where I did a tic-tac-toe project where students had essentially a tic-tac-toe board, and they had to choose three in a row of a variety of different projects. They got to choose their three in a row to do those three projects that related to the whole, big project, as it were. And so similar, like how do I grade all these 9 different types of projects that I decided to put in there? And I really just created a generic rubric, right? Went back to like, what are the outcomes? Like, what am I, even though there were different options, like everything kind of pointed back to similar outcomes that I wanted them to get out of that. It was just about giving them choice in how they kind of met those outcomes. And then so I created a generic rubric that was able to encompass all of what I was looking for in each of the 9 projects. And it made it a little bit easier to do. Obviously, that's maybe not always doable, at the higher ed level, but it's that would be a suggestion to me to start is kind of, one, use rubrics to make your life easier, and 2, like how can you make it so that your rubrics can kind of cross over the different types of projects that you might get in.
That's really a great approach. I was thinking about rubrics, but also I was thinking about Cheesecake Factory again. We won't tell anybody that I
promise we're not recording at lunchtime right now either.
Right.
Yeah.
It's only 9:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And we've done cheesecake and ice cream already.
Right. But not only from the choice perspective, thinking back about the menu, but can you imagine being the chef at the Cheesecake Factory? So that's kind of like the faculty, right? That's kind of like the faculty members, the chefs. They're like, they're creating all these things, and the students are like, oh, so many things, and so it might be overwhelming on both sides. So again, it's not that you have to have all the choices, but I recently finished up my master's in ed, or I'm graduating in May, actually. One of my faculty members, this is the first time I've been in school forever, I feel like, right? Decades. But I was taking this course, and it was the first time ever that I had a course that was full UDL. And he offered 5 choices, which I was like, wow, that's a lot. But he offered, the faculty member offered 5 choices of different types of things how we could express our knowledge. And it was really fun, one, because I got to try the different choices. So I got to learn a little bit of that, metacognitive, in that metacognitive reflective way. I got to learn a little bit what I enjoy and how I express my knowledge best. But it was also, he didn't go too far for that specific course. He offered 5. I've heard faculty say, well, I have 50 students in my course. How about 2 or 3? And I was like, well, offering 2 or 3 is better than offering 1. And if you have a way like a rubric, or something that can guide those requirements, then that's a great start. I think that's a great approach. And then also just making it clear, with the tilt, transparent learning and teaching, making it so that students know what the purpose is, what the purpose, the task, and the criteria. You have a lot of flexibility on how you do it, but if they know the purpose, the task, and the criteria, it also makes it very transparent for the students on that flexibility, but what are the expectations too?
Yeah.
And I think an important part of offering your students different ways to submit an assignment is they're going to take away a skill set from the method they choose, and they're going to be able to transfer that to another class. If you have one student that's constantly submitting PowerPoints, for example, you know they're going to be a PowerPoint master by the time they're done with your course. And can you then, during the course of the class, say to the student, you know, I would love for you to try doing your next assignment as a discussion or as a video, because you've shown me you've got the PowerPoint mastery. I know you've got that down pat, but I want to move you a little bit out of your comfort zone into, you're already high in your PowerPoint. I need to get you in your other skill sets that same level of comfort. So let's try this example. As long as you work it into your course that you've got meetings with your students and you can suggest these things. Because one of the funnest things I found in a course was, in one version of the course, they were using Adobe Spark to put together a learning portfolio. And then in the very next version of the course, they had shifted over to Digication, which is kind of the same thing, just a different name. But the information was transferable. I didn't have to relearn a new program to put together a learning portfolio. It was all just there. I had to relearn some menu items, but you have to do that every year with software updates anyway. So I think that transformation, the transferring the skills you learn into your next class or into your job or into the real world is an important part of universal design and
Yeah.
how we apply it in our classes.
Well, and just your example too there of a tool like Adobe Spark to use for something, whether it's a portfolio or any kind of assignment, that in and of itself gives some students some option and some creativity, right? So you don't have to necessarily say, you can submit it this way or this way. You can say, well, you're going to submit the project via Adobe Spark. Within Adobe Spark, you have the option to add images, add video, change the style of your, how your text is formatted and, and how you lay out your project within that. And so it gives a little bit more of that, kind of ownership of the students for how they want to submit it. But everything is essentially coming in the, in the same format, right? In Adobe Spark. And so, but the students have that freedom and that choice and that voice to, like you said, Jessica, earlier, make meaning of what they're doing in their space. And so that's why I love a tool like Adobe Spark. And I know it's not for everybody, but it's something along those lines. Google Sites is also an option there, where you can kind of have some more of that freedom and more of that creativity too for students. So, using tools like that, I think, in thinking about how that relates to your outcomes and how that, can be incorporated. We obviously don't want to just say like use a tool for the sake of using a tool, but if it fits for what you're doing and you can put that in there, I think it's great.
I was thinking, I had two thoughts. Hopefully they haven't disappeared. I had two thoughts while you guys were talking. And one, when you brought up Adobe Spark, I was thinking about VoiceThread, because sometimes, faculty maybe they don't have a project or aren't doing project-based learning, but they're really trying to figure out, how can I engage my students? This is a lot of lecture material, or there is a lot of material we're going through. How am I going to engage my students? And I really appreciate that VoiceThread takes a UDL approach, in that it offers, you can do like a voice, as a commenter, you can do a voice, you can do a video, you can do text. And so I think that provides a lot of variety. On the other hand, though, kind of how you also mentioned, Adam, about having some, or actually, Brian, it was you were saying, you've really developed this skill, right? I could see that you're a fabulous PowerPointer, but I'd love to see it if you did this. Michelle Pacansky-Brock, I know I've mentioned her twice. You guys, well, I just listened to the Think UDL podcast that she was a guest on. And one thing that she mentioned was specifically that, students are often really nervous about speaking up in online classes, like voicing their opinions or doing videos. They would rather just write, which is a lot of their strengths. They're like really good writers, but a lot of them feel really uncomfortable with video. But it's hard. Her story was, my online student was graduating and I was like, oh, I wonder what she looks like, because she had never seen her. And so her goal was to change that. She wants her students to know that she's a human, like a real face and a body, a person, but that they are too. And so she, even though they were using VoiceThread, she said, okay, we're going to do this together, but our first VoiceThread, I want you to do video, and I'll allow flexibility after this point, but I want to see your faces. I want you to see me, and I want us to kind of exchange our introductions and get to know each other. And I think that was a really good approach, because I've been teaching online since 2009, and a lot of people are really nervous about being on video.
That's understandable. And I think, also from an inclusion standpoint, with video, maybe not every student has a webcam, or maybe not every student has a place where they, can go and record a video. And so, giving that option, and I think putting it up, like you said, putting it out there up front, and just saying like this first one, so find a way to get this first one done, and then you have some flexibility after that. That might relieve, maybe some of the anxiety too from students, where they know it's just one that they have to do. And it's for a purpose, to show presence to the instructor, and the instructor is doing that as well, and you get that instructor presence. So that's great. And maybe we can, when this podcast is released, we can tweet at Michelle Pacansky-Brock and see if she'll come as a guest in a future podcast of our own. So
yeah, that would be great. She can talk about her liquid syllabus or other elements of humanizing.
I love the liquid
course.
syllabus. I went to her session at OLC about that last year. I thought it was wonderful. So
contributions to our guest star donation.
We'll see. It never hurts to ask, right? That's what I always say. The worst they're gonna say is no.
No, right.
Yeah.
But I have a pitch for you.
Oh, okay. We like pitches.
Yeah, I like pitches too. Okay. So what if we did like a challenge, like a 10-day UDL challenge? Okay. And we could help faculty during those 10 days, but like each day you could do, okay, today, just go through, for example, the links in your course and make sure that they're all working. This could be like a pre-semester, like right before the courses are out, or we're going to show you how to look at contrast and fonts, or audio and visual. Oh, okay, you don't have these captioned yet. We're going to show you how to get access to captioning or alt text, or those are just some accessibility things. Or also you could have a choice, assignment choice. Look at a few of your assignments and see if there's opportunity to offer more than one choice in this assignment. And that would be like you could do like a 10-day accessibility or UDL challenge, but include some of those accessibility elements, since there is, an accessibility, inclusivity, equity, and include some of those because they're overlapping. And it could be, I don't know, it could be a thing.
I like that. I think, let's do it. It's easy to say on here. Let's do it. Let's go for it. But I think, that's a great, that would be something great to have available for faculty and to do as reminders. And, maybe any of our listeners, if you want to contribute or have thoughts, feel free to contact us and let us know. And hopefully that's something we can get going, and definitely read the digital download newsletter that is that Jessica helped contribute and curate for the month of March 2022. If if that's something that maybe we can, kind of get going in conjunction with that as well, that would be awesome.
Well, and right, and then there's also, I think, Nicole Schmidt is offering a great workshop on UDL related to Quality Matters as well right now, I believe. So I think there's lots of
Awesome.
opportunities to support faculty, and of course, we want faculty to share their voice and related to UDL if their voice and choice.
Yeah.
So definitely, if there's some interest there, that would be lots of fun.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely reach out to us, and also if you have questions about universal design or accessibility or any of the topics that we discussed in today's podcast, come to office hours. We offer office hours Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. Virtually. So any of us, any of the instructional designers in our office that happen to be on office hours during any given week would be happy to discuss these things with you. You can check that out on our website as well, digitallearning.arizona.edu under events. You can find those times and a link to join. So
And
thank you
on
for
that
that
tab,
transition for the plugs there, Jessica. Yeah.
and also on the events tab, you can find a bunch of courses that we're offering online, such as designing your online course, inclusive design for everyone, applying the QM standard 8, how to improve your online course, how to apply the Quality Matters rubric workshop. We're doing these courses all the way. We're scheduled through July. So come check out the courses we have, sign up for one of them, and learn how to Emerald Lagasse your course. Bam!
Bam.
Take it up to the next level.
There were way too many food references in this
I-
podcast. I'm sad that it is only 10 o'clock and not lunch or dinner time yet. But
I know, I feel the same way. I was thinking, gosh, I'm ready for nachos.
right. Yes. I think the next time we should just record at the Cheesecake Factory, and
Hey,
we
Yes.
can just order all the things off the novel of a menu that they have.
Right. No, that sounds great. And of course, we want faculty to come build courses with us, right? We love partnering with faculty and supporting them and making their online experience fantastic for the faculty as well as for the students.
Definitely. I just want to thank Jessica for joining us today on our podcast. I think this was a really fun conversation, brought up some really good ideas and conversations. So thank you, Jessica, for joining us, and hopefully we'll have you back in a future episode as well.
Well, thank you so much for having me and giving me the opportunity. It was like a brainstorming session. I love brainstorming. It was fantastic.
Excellent. Be sure to join us for our next podcast, which I believe our topic is yet to be determined, right, Brian?
well, I think it's how instructional designers work best when eating cheesecake at the Cheesecake Factory.
Yes, you are correct. That will be our next topic in some form or another, I'm sure.
The feeding and caring of your instructional design.
There you go. I like it. But yeah, please be sure to join us. We will be recording and releasing podcasts every month, and the digital download newsletter will be released every other month. So be sure to check that out as well, and learn and connect with the wonderful instructional design team at Digital Learning. So thank you all for listening and joining us, and we'll see you next time.
The Futures of Digital Learning podcast is a production of the University of Arizona Digital Learning. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas you'd like to share with our office, go to the Contact Us link on our website.